hosting the conference championship game this weekend will be the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this was not easy. And a lot of people are going to say, Evan, if it wasn't snowing in this game, Rams would have won. And, we'll never know. And I'm not here for the people that say, oh, all football should be played in a dome. That's ridiculous. I thought it was a really cool game in the snow. But I do agree that the snow had an impact on this game. Kyron had a really bad fumble that looked like on a slippery ball. Stafford had a really bad fumble. Puka Nacua had a really bad drop on a big third down. And then the Rams, again, for the second time this season, just can't stop the Eagles' ground game. You add it up, and despite Jalen Hurts throwing for just 128 yards, Eagles are back in the NFC Championship game. Evan, what did you think of Eagles' win over the Rams?
Yeah, I think that Jalen Hurts, well, first of all, the Eagles did not cover. They ended up pushing because of this safety at the end of the game. And we had, as part of our big parlay, our three-legger, the Eagles at -6, so they wound up pushing. I don't know, some books address that differently, but we hit the other two legs. But anyways, yeah, Jalen Hurts came out with that monster touchdown run. Saquon was incredible, continuing to put together one of the greatest running back seasons of all time. Jalen Hurts as a passer, though, never looked comfortable, I didn't think. They did just barely miss that big completion to A.J. Brown down the right sideline in the right corner of the end zone that would have made his numbers look a little bit better. But yeah, throwing in the snow, I didn't think that he ever looked comfortable against the Rams.
Well, look, and what people are going to say, Evan, is can you win a Super Bowl with quarterback play like this? And I know you're not in Philly, but everybody that I know in Philly is saying the same thing. Can't win with Jalen Hurts. He's not a quarterback. He hasn't had a good game throwing in months. If they get behind, they're screwed. They're winning in spite of Jalen Hurts. I don't really agree necessarily, but I can't deny, at least from a fantasy perspective, that it's been rough for A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, rough for Jalen Hurts as a thrower. Do you think there's something there that Jalen Hurts is struggling with the throw game, or you think it's just randomness with their game plans?
I thought in the previous game that Jalen Hurts had plays called back that were really ticky-tack. And again, if they would have hit this, if A.J. Brown would have stayed in bounds on this particular play, his numbers go to like 8 yards per pass attempt. This team is built to run the football. This game necessitated the winner of the game being built to run the football. Kyron Williams on the other side ran the football really well too, by the way. Mm-hmm. Somewhat surprising against the Eagles' defensive front. But this team is built to run the football. They've played this way the entire season. The Eagles keep winning games. They've got 16 wins on the season, 16-3 if you include the playoffs. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know how you can sit there and say, I think the Eagles have the most talented roster in the NFL. I don't think that Jalen Hurts is a significant impediment to them winning the Super Bowl. Do you believe that?
Absolutely not. I think they can definitely win the Super Bowl by having the best offensive line in the league, one of the best defensive lines and overall defenses in the league, and just this historic running game, right?
In the other conference, the Bills are playing like the same way. I like Josh Allen better than Jalen Hurts, but the Bills are playing the same way.
Saquon Barkley, I know we talk a lot on here, running back positions overrated and everything. On a good team, having someone like Saquon Barkley getting more yards per expectation when you're running the ball 30, 35 times a game certainly matters. Saquon in this game, 26, 205, and 2 in the snow, also caught 4 balls. So, yeah, when you can run the ball like that and play defense like that, even in today's NFL, I still think you can win the Super Bowl, and the Eagles are just 2 wins away from it now. Last thing I'll say on A.J. Brown, he did see 7 targets here for a 35% share. If not for the weather, he probably comes down with that ball that Evan's talking about on the right sideline. A.J. Brown's going to continue to project pretty well. And as we start to think about this game against the Commanders, Jalen Hurts is almost certainly going to have to throw more than 20 times. And so when you get A.J. Brown projected for 25, 28, 30% of the targets, A.J. Brown's still going to project pretty well here. So, yeah. Before we get to the Rams, Evan, any guesses at the line and total for Rams Commanders NFC Championship game?
Well, I think I already know what the line is because I was looking.
Okay.
I know that it opened at 4.5, and I bet the Eagles right away at 4.5, and I saw that it, at least at one book, that it moved to 6.
It is 6, yes.
Yeah. So I'm not even going to guess at the total. I don't know, 40. I don't know what are we looking at for the weather. I don't know. This is a tough one because I don't know anything about the weather. I'll go 45 and a half.
Weather, I think as of now for Sunday, high of 39 degrees,
Oh,
no precipitation,
okay. Then
wind
never
is
mind.
light.
Then never mind. I'm gonna go 47 and a half.
Oh God. Eagles are 6, and the total is 47 and a half. We're going to lose Evan to a lines making job. Somebody's going to listen to this, and they're going to say, Evan should be setting our totals here
I'm
for.
open to all consulting work.
Okay. Just to quickly put a bow on the Rams season. This was a difficult spot for them at Philadelphia. Go across the country, everything with the fires going on for 2 weeks, a lot of emotions coming down up from an LA team going to a very cold, snowy conditions to face a good defense. And Philly's a really difficult place to play. They still had a chance to win the game with this furious late comeback. So they're going to go into the offseason, I think, on a high note. They went 10-3 over their final 13 games, including the playoffs. Evan, any final thoughts on Rams 24-25 season?
Yeah, and all things considered, I thought that they played a really good game. They were barely ever able to even get the push from the sportsbook standpoint because of that stupid safety. But I thought that they were pretty competitive. I thought that there was a chance that the Eagles might absolutely smoke them. I thought that they threw the ball pretty well in the weather, all things considered. And Kyron Williams had a really nice game on the ground. They can bring all these guys back. I know that the big question is going to be Cooper Kupp, but I think as you posted on Twitter today, they're not going to really save a ton of money by bringing him back. They can bring back, pretty much everybody, including on the offensive line. So, and we know that they're really good offensively. They need some more pieces. They had the cheapest defense in the NFL this year, by the way.
Yeah.
So they should be able to buy some free agents to supplement their defense. I think they could use some help in the secondary. But I think that they're going to be a factor again in 2025.
I mean, Matthew Stafford will turn 37 years old in February, right? So you start to get a little bit worried there. I still think he had a solid season. The big excitement, though, for the Rams has to be their defensive line. Like, they've invested a ton of draft capital, which they don't normally have a ton of draft capital, but they've used a lot of it on Fisk and Verse and Kobe Turner and all these guys that turned out to be pretty big hits. And so that's something that they can build around for sure. Yeah, on the Cup thing, they'll only save $7.5 million by cutting him against the cap, right? That's like nothing in today's NFL and the cap. They could save a little bit more if they find someone to take him in a trade. I'm skeptical that they can find someone to take him in a trade, 32 years old, and certainly looked like he was in pretty big decline. All right. Let's go to the NFC's 6th seed, who is miraculously, shockingly, still alive. Washington Commanders went on the road in the first round and beat the Bucks. Okay, whatever. Bucks were they got in mostly because of their division. Then they go on the road as a huge dog in Detroit with a stone cold rookie quarterback, put up 31 points in the first half in Detroit, capitalized on some really bad Lions mistakes, smartly navigate the second half. And this team is in the NFC Championship game. And the story has to be Jaden Daniels. Like, I understand that the Lions defense was at junior varsity caliber thanks to injuries. But this is the same Lions defense that made a very good Vikings offense look foolish in week 18. So, like, in no way do I want to take anything away from Jaden Daniels here. Evan, what do you think of Commanders' win in Detroit?
Lots of thoughts here. Lots of thoughts. I mean, there was a lot of action. I think the stat was like, these teams combined for something like 50 first downs or something like that. I mean, this was an unbelievable game. The Commanders pulled away at the end. So on the first drive of the game, the Lions lost Amik Robertson, who in their last game they had used in man coverage against Justin Jefferson. He did a great job. He got the game ball, and they lost him for the game on the first drive. And I think that kind of opened the floodgates immediately for a big-time offensive performance from Jaden Daniels. I thought that Cliff Kingsbury was in his bag big time. I think that the fact that Washington, is now going to advance to the NFC Championship game, like Cliff Kingsbury is going to stay for another year. I think that that's a good thing at this point. I think even the Cliff haters can agree that that's probably a good thing for Jaden Daniels and the entire offense. Jaden Daniels just, there's like sort of a debate. Oh, is this the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time? It would be really hard to argue against that, considering the fact they just won they had back-to-back upset playoff wins. They're going to the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels, if you want to do a real comparison of Jaden Daniels against Caleb Williams, who elevated their teammates better? Because Rome Odunze was a disappointment. Keenan Allen was DJ Moore took a big step back from his previous season. The offensive line gave up 1 million sacks to Caleb Williams, whereas Jaden Daniels, De'Ami Brown is out here balling.
Yeah.
Before that, Olamide Zaccheaus was giving them nice games. Zach Ertz has been a shocking factor the entire season. The offensive line that was rated in many circles as the worst entering the NFL has been okay. Terry McLaurin has been, this has been the best season of his career. And now we're talking about Cliff Kingsbury potentially becoming an NFL head coach again. So the elevator of teammates is by far, bar none, Jaden Daniels through one season. And yeah, I think it would be hard to argue against him as the best rookie quarterback of all time.
If Jaden ends up beating the Eagles and going to the Super Bowl, he would be the first rookie quarterback ever to start a Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean, the offensive line stuff, and I know I'm already tired of like the Caleb versus Jaden,
well, I got about history. 6 months of this to listen to on Chicago Sports Radio.
Oh, I couldn't face that. But I would say to the people that just want to blame offensive line, Commanders came into this season with one of the worst projected offensive lines. Quarterbacks make a difference. A lot of people could argue sacks are a quarterback stat, and Jaden has been so composed, and they are designing way more rush stuff for him here in the playoffs. His design run rate is way up. They get into these 3rd and 4th downs and short situations, and it's all read option stuff, and Jaden is just doing such a good job. Speaking of offensive line, Evan, I don't know how much you think this matters, but right guard Sam Cosmi blew out his ACL here. I don't know how much you think that matters, but he's certainly going to be out here. Any thoughts on that injury for the Commanders?
Yeah, that one stinks. I mean, he was the player entering the season that all the offensive line projection people were like, all right, well, they have one good player, and it's Sam Cosmi, and then a whole bunch of question marks. And now you're going up against Jalen Carter, who, remember how he kind of tailed off at the end of his rookie season? Well, he is not tailed off at the end of his second season. He was an absolute beast against the Rams. It's a huge, huge concern, I think, for the Commanders and how they're going to deal with that.
Okay. The running back split for the Commanders was something that we talked about a bunch last week, Eckler versus Brian Robinson. In this script, where the Commanders were surprisingly winning the entire time, of course you're going to get more Brian Robinson. And he finally got going, 15 carries, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I just want to note that even in this script, where they were winning the entire game, Austin Eckler still played a ton. Brian Robinson, 39 snaps. Eckler, 28 snaps. And I thought Eckler looked really good. I mean, 10 touches, 88 total yards. So just a note there on the running backs. On De'Ami Brown, as Evan mentioned, he's had 2 really good games. They've come against probably the 2 best matchups right now for a wide receiver, Tampa Bay and Detroit. I don't want to take anything away from Jaden and De'Ami. I'm just saying it's going to be a way tougher test going outside to Philly for De'Ami Brown. So yeah, Evan, any more thoughts on the Eckler, B-Rob stuff or De'Ami, McLaurin, et cetera?
Yeah, just, I got to capitulate on Brian Robinson. He really had struggled like 5 games in a row. I was like, they got to weed him out. They can't play this guy. But, the Commanders got a lead, and Brian Robinson ran real well in this game. So my hat's off to Brian Robinson. Always, considering what he went through, a rookie, an easy guy to root for. Really nice to see him have a good game against Detroit.
Last note for me on the Commanders is the Zach Ertz stuff. So, it was just like my eye test. I was like, man, every time they get around the 5-yard line, they run this like arrow route for Zach Ertz where he kind of lines up split wide a little bit, goes out for a second, and then cuts hard back in. And I only know this because I've run this play in Madden like 1,000 times. But they keep doing it and keep doing it successfully. Zach Ertz has 7 touchdowns in his last 9 games. They have come from 5 yards out, 5 yards out, 10 yards out, 2 yards out, 4 yards out, 4 yards out, 5 yards out. During the regular season, Zach Ertz was 4th among all tight ends with 10 targets inside the 10-yard line. So when they get down there, it hasn't been as much De'Ami and McLaurin. The scheme stuff has been a lot to Zach Ertz, which is certainly notable for anyone still grinding the fantasy and prop stuff here into conference championship week. All right. Man, we got to end this Lions season, Evan, and I'm sad. They were #OurLions for a long time. Their fan base finally seemed like they had a clean path to the Super Bowl. Brutal end to an amazing season. And what people are going to say, they're going to say, see, I told you, you need someone better than Jared Goff at quarterback. You need someone better than Jared Goff at quarterback. I don't know that I necessarily agree, but the interceptions here were rough. I mean, 3 of them, and Goff lost a fumble. And when your defense is playing so poorly, you just can't overcome that. But I'm not going to sit here and say that you can't win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, because I do think that if the defense had stayed healthy, Hutchinson, Carlton Davis, all these guys, that you easily could have won a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. So, Evan, any final thoughts on Lions season?
Yeah, I mean, Jared Goff did not play particularly well. 4 turnovers. That's never a quality quarterback performance. The Lions still put up 31 points and like 500 total yards. So the offense was not really the issue here. I think it was just the attrition on defense. Anytime you score 31 points and put up 500 total yards, like, you should win that game. But, we've all seen the guys putting up the too deep depth chart with all the red lines. And, again, Amik Robertson went out on the first drive, and Jaden Daniels had a sensational game, and, 0 sacks on Jaden Daniels on 31 dropbacks. So, yeah, and it was just killing against the blitz. I mean, I don't think that there was a whole lot that the Lions could do.
Well, what you could do, and I know this is hindsight, but you could not call an end around to Jameson Williams to throw the football. I mean, he's like the last guy that I would want an end around throwing the football. And that was a really big play in the game, because at the time they were only down 10.
Yeah.
And so, but is
Yeah,
what it is. They've run plays like that all year.
Yeah, I saw Bomani Jones saying no one should hire Ben Johnson because he had the Jameson Williams throw the ball, and they still scored 31 and put up 500. But
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't look like very good in hindsight. And they threw it off his back foot. It wasn't a good one.
Yeah. We'll get to the Ben Johnson to Chicago stuff on a future podcast here when we do coaching changes. Last thought on Detroit I had, Evan, was what do you think about the Gibbs-Montgomery split next season? Because in the biggest game of the year, and I understand that it was a trailing script and Dave Montgomery's coming off a knee injury, but in the biggest game of the year, it was Gibbs 52 snaps, David Montgomery 17. And in these 4 games since David Montgomery suffered that knee injury, I mean, Gibbs was like Marshall Faulk, like LaDainian Tomlinson, Pete Christian McCaffrey, like absolutely insane. Any thoughts on the Montgomery Gibbs stuff going forward?
Oh, man, I have not even thought about that.
Yeah.
I think that they'll probably go back to pretty close to even split. I mean, they love Dave Montgomery. He was coming off an injury here. They gave him the in-season extension that wasn't even necessary. I think that they'll go back to a fairly even split to begin next season, and then gradually it will move in Jahmyr Gibbs' direction. In my last matchups column for the Lions, I kind of compared it to the Jamal Charles, Thomas Jones situation, where everyone was really frustrated for the 1 year. Remember, Todd Haley was calling plays for the Chiefs, and then Jamal Charles eventually just broke off, and you couldn't keep playing Thomas Jones anymore. And I think that will probably be the case as next season wears on. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a first-round pick. I had him as a first-round pick this year.
Yeah, we had him as a first-round pick this year.
Yeah, he will be a first-round pick, no question. He'll probably be top 10
for sure. Yeah, easily. And the Lions went 15-2 with Jahmyr Gibbs only getting half of the snaps or half of the running back touches. I don't think they need to force it and like put Jahmyr Gibbs in danger for 80%, but I'd love to see him get to 60% of the running back touches. I don't think that's too much to ask next season. Okay. Let's go to the AFC. We'll start with the number 1 seed, the Kansas City Chiefs. This was just a typical, standard, classic 2024 season Chiefs game. They didn't play that well. Nothing special. Nothing spectacular. They were only up 13-12 on this Texans team midway through the third quarter. But they do what it takes to win. And to me, like, the big story was Travis Kelce. Mahomes only had 16 completions. Travis Kelce had 7 of those catches. Outside of Xavier Worthy, no other wide receiver even caught a pass. So, I mean, they were really reliant on playoff Kelce here. Evan, any thoughts on Chiefs win over the Texans?
Yeah, there were a bunch of plays where it was shocking how open Travis Kelce was. Like, the Texans kind of dismissed him, and maybe that's because they felt, more worried about a fully loaded Chiefs wide receiver core. But either way, Travis Kelce had an awesome game. This is a crazy stat from Next Gen Stats, and I kind of think it was a misprint, but it's from Next Gen Stats. They don't usually uh, mess things up. So Travis Kelce had 62 yards after the catch versus the Texans. That should surprise no one from anyone that watched the game. He had 33 yards after missed tackles in this game against the Texans. During the course of the season, he had 18 yards combined after missed tackles over the entire course of the season. 33 in this game, 18 for the entire regular season after missed tackles. So
Crazy.
he just played out of his mind. The touchdown catch was sensational. Yeah, that's what I got on Travis Kelce.
I'll say, so this playoff Kelce thing, you know, people are gonna be like, oh well, he's old. There's no more playoff Kelce. Career in the regular season, only 5.8 catches. In the playoffs, 7.5 catches. Career regular season, 69.8 yards. Career in the playoffs, 87.8 yards. And career regular season, 0.44 touchdowns per game. In the playoffs, 0.87. I mean, he has been incredibly better in the playoffs. And I didn't get down to the target share on that stuff, but my gut is a lot of that is just Mahomes trusts him more in big spots. And these are big spots, obviously, in the playoffs, and he gets the ball more and he's productive. So, yeah. The wide receivers were healthy, obviously, outside of Rashee Rice. Patrick Mahomes dropped back 32 times. Worthy led the way with 28 routes. He's the only one that caught a pass. Hollywood had a big chance for a big play early in the game, couldn't come down with it. He went catchless on 23 routes. DeAndre Hopkins only 13 routes. So much for the narrative that he would play more. He didn't catch a ball. Juju ran 13 routes, and Justin Watson just 3. So you're seeing a lot more Noah Gray with Kelce out there, and then the 2 wide receiver set being Worthy and Hollywood Brown, not DeAndre Hopkins. Really disappointing day for all the wide receivers, though. Evan, any thoughts on them and then going forward into this Bills game?
Nothing to add. I would just say that one of the big matchup things entering the Bills Chiefs game is going to be, so the Chiefs generated the 5th fewest 20-plus yard completions in the NFL this year. They were not a big play offense. They were not a big play offense in this game either. And the Bills allowed the 3rd fewest 20-plus yard completions in the NFL. So, will the Chiefs be able to generate any explosive plays? One injury to watch is Christian Benford, the Bills' best cornerback. They often use him to match up against number 1 wide receivers. He is in the concussion protocol. Yeah. And Taylor Rapp, one of their starting safeties, got hurt, injured his hip in against the Ravens. Those would be things to watch. There's a bunch of moving parts potentially in terms of the passing game for Chiefs Bills.
Last thing on the Chiefs is the running back split. So Kareem Hunt played 24 snaps, Pacheco 16. Opportunities were 9-6 in favor of Hunt. But to me, the key is short yardage. And ever since Kareem Hunt signed with this team, and even once Pacheco got back, they have trusted Kareem Hunt way more in short yardage. And Andy Reid even talked about it in the game. He said, after the game, he said, Kareem Hunt has done a nice job for us in short yardage situations. He's a big kid. He's got a good low center of gravity, and he's got great vision and lateral cutting ability. That fits in well with short yardage. He's able to squeeze through those tight holes. So I have absolutely no doubt that if they get into goal line situations, they'd prefer to use Hunt over Pacheco. Doesn't mean if Pacheco's out there and they're running something, they won't leave Pacheco in there. But I think their preference is for Hunt in short yardage, even though Pacheco is going to play a little bit here also.
Yeah, that in-season signing when the Chiefs picked up Kareem Hunt, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I mean, he could be a factor, a little bit. It wound up being like a really good signing. I mean, he's been really solid for them. Again, he's not going to hit big plays, but he's going to get what's blocked. And the Chiefs are really good in terms of their interior blocking. And he's going to execute in short yardage. And I mean, right now, I think you could make an argument that he's just a better option than Isaiah Pacheco, who just is not. I'm not sure that he's really ever found his footing after that early season injury.
Evan, would you like to guess at the line and total for Bills at Chiefs?
The pressure is starting to build here. I mean, I'll go Chiefs minus 2.5. I don't know. What's the weather looking like? Do you know what the weather's looking like?
It's going to be nice.
Really?
Yeah.
My cousin's trying to get me to go. He has season tickets.
Oh, you should.
I went a couple years ago to Bills Chiefs.
It's going to be 35 and sunny, no precipitation, no wind.
I'll go 45.5.
Very close. Line is Chiefs -2, 47.5 for
47
Chiefs
huh?
home against the Bills. All right, just put a bow on the Texans season. Obviously, the talk of the Texans offseason will be, how can we get the offensive line fixed? I mean, this was one of the worst units all year. CJ Stroud took 52 sacks. That was the second most in the NFL behind Caleb Williams. But, and like I just said, I think offensive line play can be mitigated by good quarterback play, and sacks are often a quarterback stat. But man, it really affected CJ Stroud because his eyes were dropping. He was missing throws. They turned run heavy, probably out of offensive line concerns at some point. So all the blame is going to be placed on the offensive line. But yeah, Evan, any final thoughts on Texans for the season?
I just want to shout out Trent McDuffie for doing a really good job on Nico Collins. Nico Collins made some great catches in this game, as he usually does. He went 5 for 81 on 8 targets. But when Trent McDuffie, the Chiefs' top corner, was aligned on him, and Nico Collins has a very big size advantage on Trent McDuffie. But they went head-to-head on 15 routes. Trent McDuffie held Nico Collins to 1 catch for 24 yards on 3 targets. So McDuffie, he doesn't cover guys necessarily on every single snap, but he can really hold down your number one receiver. I'm pretty disappointed at the Texans. It looks like they're going to keep Bobby Slowick. I think that he has had a pretty big hand in this. The offensive line has not played well. Maybe they'll fire the offensive line coach, but the amount of unblocked pressure, and this was another like free rushers at CJ Stroud. That has been a really big problem all year. And so the fact that they are keeping, and I think that you put that on the offensive coordinator, and the fact that they're keeping him again, I think is a little bit of a disappointment. Hopefully that they can get that fixed, but just to have unblocked rushers, they allowed more unblocked pressure than any team in the NFL this year. CJ Stroud was pressured on 12 plays this week where he was blitzed. 8 of those, 75%, came via unblocked pass rushers.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable.
The other concern is that Tank Dell may not be back next season due to this devastating injury. And Steph Diggs is going to be 32 in November, and he's coming off an injury too. And
he's a free agent.
And he's great. I mean, you can't trot out Xavier Hutchinson and Sir Robert of the Trees, Bobby Woods. It's not going to work, So, and as much as I love Nico Collins, that's going to be a tough sell. So, yeah, interesting offseason coming up for the Texans. All right. Number 2 seed in the AFC advanced, it was the Buffalo Bills. Huge step for the Bills. They somehow beat Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team in a very cold game in Buffalo. You could make a case here, Evan, that the Ravens outplayed the Bills, but the Bills commit 0 turnovers. Bills take just 1 sack. And meanwhile, the Ravens, bunch of huge mistakes. That floating interception in the first quarter that Lamar threw, Mark Andrews' fumble, Mark Andrews' drop of the 2-point conversion. I mean, these teams strike me as really, really close. If they played 100 times, maybe the Ravens would win like 51 or 52 out of those 100 or something like that. But they're really, really close. Any thoughts on Bills' win over the Ravens?
Well, the Bills have really leaned into this bully ball formula. And if you remember, when Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator, they started to do that a little bit down the stretch last season. And, there have obviously been big Josh Allen games over the course of the year, but right now they are saddling up a 6 offensive linemen. Spencer Brown, their right tackle, has been an absolute beast in the running game. Deion Dawkins has always been a great run blocker, a left tackle, and James Cook is having, a really, really nice season. They just run the ball with consistency, with authority. Their quarterback is a huge part of the run game, and that's not necessarily the way to beat the Ravens. It certainly wasn't for the vast majority of 2024, but the Bills are kind of sticking to their formula, and it's working.
Yeah. The Josh Allen stuff from a fantasy perspective, even if he doesn't have good throwing games, he is like the call around the goal line. 2 more rushing touchdowns here. And I mean, one thing about the goal line that was crazy, I don't know if you noticed this. It was early on. I think it was the first drive for the Bills. James Cook's running well. Josh Allen's running well. They get to the 1-yard line. No tush push. They take James Cook off the field, put in Ray Davis. And Ray Davis, who was coming off a concussion, he got the 1-yard touchdown. And man, I had so much Bills stuff in best ball and all this other stuff. And I was like, I could not believe that it wasn't Allen, it wasn't Cook. They take Cook off the field and go to Ray Davis at the goal line. So that was just something I noted there at the goal line. And again, it's hard to get a good projection on James Cook because of Ty Johnson carried 5 times. Ray Davis carried 4 times plus the goal line. Josh Allen had 2 touchdown runs around the goal line and 10 more carries himself. So it's hard to get a good projection on James Cook, but man, he's certainly been outperforming baselines for a while now. Pass catchers, they are so flat still. I mean, Josh Allen has targeted 9 different pass catchers at least 3 times in the playoffs. The routes in this game against the Ravens on 23 Josh Allen dropbacks were Shakir 18, Keon Coleman 14, Mac Hollins 10, Curtis Samuel 10, Amari Cooper 10. And credit to Amari Cooper, they asked about him a ton in the post-game press conference, and McDermott was like, he's just being a team player. He just wants to win. I mean, they're not even using Amari Cooper. They're barely using their first-round pick, Keon Coleman, in the pass game, and they're still winning. I don't know how sustainable that is, but yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Bills pass catchers heading into this game against the Chiefs?
No. Nope. I mean, because we've been over it so many times and we've been talking about it week after week and nothing has changed. We kind of hoped maybe they would narrow the distribution at one point. They're not going to do that. So that's just how they're going to play. And
also Dalton Kincaid, even though he's running more routes than Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid has not topped 53 yards in a game all season. All season, he hasn't had more than 53 yards in a game, which is just absolutely insane. So, yeah. All right. Just to end here on the Ravens, they're already out. The pitchforks are already out for Lamar. Oh, another playoff loss. He's a regular season merchant. Lamar is now 3-5 in the playoffs in his 7-year career. He's never been to a Super Bowl. He didn't have Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews drops the 2-point conversion. I don't know. Do you think there's any merit in this stuff that Lamar is underperforming in the playoffs for any reason other than variance? Or do you even think he's underperforming? Because, compared to regular season when he's been the MVP probably back-to-back years, it's like maybe he's underperforming, but he's still playing at a really high level. It's kind of my take. But yeah, any thoughts on the Lamar narrative and the end of the Ravens season?
Yeah, if you just want to do straight up regular season versus playoff, performance, like that's not fair, number one, because you're playing better teams in the playoffs. And I thought Lamar Jackson played awesome in this game. He was the reason that they, came with it. He was the reason that the game should have been tied late in the game. And Mark Andrews, he had a really nice season, especially for a guy coming off the car crash and everything in training camp, coming off last season's injury. He was kind of the reason that they lost here, unfortunately. And it was not Lamar. One thing to note, the Ravens defense has not created a single turnover in any of their last 5 playoff games. So he's also not getting very much help from the defense. And also when they were coordinated by Greg Roman, they were just built to be so run heavy and not built to be diverse in the passing game. And they weren't never built to come back. So when they would fall behind, they couldn't rally back. We know that Lamar Jackson is an awesome thrower of the football. That narrative, went away. It should have gone away in his second season when he won the freaking MVP and threw the most touchdown passes in the league. That narrative is far behind us, and now they are built to throw the football, and their number 1 pass catcher is out for this game, and their number 2 pass catcher is making errors all over the field.
Yeah.
So, no, this is not like a Lamar choke job whatsoever. I still think he's got a chance to win regular season MVP. I hope he doesn't because I bet on Josh Allen. But I think that's deserved. One other thing is that it feels like Todd Monken is not going to get a head coaching job, although I think he might be in consideration for the Raiders. But that would be nice to have a third year together with Lamar and Todd Monken. We saw how good they did in their first season together. They got better in their second season together. Could they take another step in year 3 together?
That was my biggest note for Ravens offseason. Retaining Todd Monken is huge for what I think of Lamar and Bateman and Andrews and all these guys next year for sure. Yeah, just one more note on the Lamar narrative stuff. When you play it, he lost this game to Josh Allen. Last year, they got knocked out by Mahomes. Joe Burrow is in this conference. Like, these games are going to be flips when you have these amazing quarterbacks playing. If Lamar Jackson was in the NFC, I'm pretty confident this playoff narrative wouldn't be out there because he would be going to more Super Bowls, etc. When you play in the AFC, it's just really, really, really tough. So, yeah, I don't want to get lost in kind of the opponent stuff. I agree. Lamar played a really good game. All right. That is going to do it for this preview of Conference Championship Sunday and putting a bow on the teams that lost in Divisional Round. For in-season subscribers, we'll be back on Friday to talk through all angles from a DFS perspective for the 2-game slate on Sunday. Should be a fun one to wrap up the season. For Evan, producer Luke, producer Ryan, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.